In the last section, we put together our card section component. Its purpose was to wrap a single section of our card, giving it enough margin and spacing to look nice. Now that we've got all the infrastructure we need, we can focus on building up each part of the card inside of album detail. So the header with the album info, the section with the image, and the Buy Now button at the bottom. First, we're going to start off with the header for each card. This right here is a diagram of what that header on each card should look like. Now, I gotta tell you, a lot of the challenge in React Native is figuring out just how to style all of our different components. I found styling for web to be a lot easier, personally, just my own personal thought. Whereas with React Native, you have to spend a little bit more time planning out how you'll construct each component. And so that's exactly what we're gonna do right now. We're gonna plan exactly how we will build this header. So underneath the header is the JSX that we'll probably more or less end up using. This is kind of the bare minimum of what we want. On the left hand side, we're going to have the artist's image, or their little headshot. And we haven't spoken too much about the image tag with React Native, but take my word for it. Basically, there is a tag that we can use to show images, so we'll figure that part out. And then beneath it, we'll have one text tag for the album name, and then another one for the artist name as well. So this means that we have kind of a little bit of a layout issue here. We need to figure out how to tell the image tag to show itself on the left, and then the text tags to show itself to the right, but also those need to line up. So this is our big first layout challenge that we've come into. So we're going to spend a little bit of time to figure out the best way to get this layout right here. To solve our layout issues with React, the best tool that we have, and perhaps the only one I should say, is the Flexbox layout mechanism. We spent a little bit of time previously discussing Flexbox, but it was all in the context of figuring out how to get some content to center or line up a single item in a container. Flexbox is also used to lay out multiple items within a container as well, which is exactly what we need to do here. So we're going to spend a little bit more time figuring out Flexbox and then immediately apply that knowledge to our header. So here's kind of our default header right now. If we just threw in the image tag and then the two text tags, we would end up seeing some content like this. Now the text tags wouldn't have the actual border to them. I just put the border on there to make it clear that, hey, this is one of the text tags. So with React Native, if we absolutely ignore styling and just toss tags into a container, they're all going to be placed on the upper left-hand side of the container and then line up vertically. That's how it works by default. Now we spoke about using Flexbox in the context of working with a single item previously, right? When we were talking about the actual header component, this one up here. But now we need to figure out how Flexbox works with multiple items as well. So all the properties we had previously discussed are still relevant. So we can still use justify content with flex end to move all these items to the bottom, or center to center it, whatever we might want to do. Let's check out how some of these different properties would affect this header. So here's our flex end equivalent. If we said on the view container, on the containing item, if we gave it justify content flex end, everything gets shoved down to the bottom. Likewise, if we gave it center, everything gets centered up. So largely behaves the same way as when we have a single item, but the difference is that if we have multiple items within this container, they all get kind of centered up. Now the next two are where things start to get a little bit more interesting and only relevant when we have multiple items within a container. The first one is justify content space between. So with space between, the container will take its list of internal items and it will maximize and equalize the amount of space between each item. So we've got the first item at the very top of the container and then the last item at the very bottom of the container. And then all the space in between the intermediate items is equalized, so they're completely equal in between there. Lastly, space around. Space around is much like space between, but it also allocates item to to ahead of the very first item and after the very last item as well. So in theory, each of these white spaces in here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, should be completely equal whenever we're using space around. So as we've just seen, there's a lot of different rules available for justify content, and we'll certainly be using them, or a couple of them, over time. But for right now, let's focus exactly on how to apply them to styling this header. Let's take a quick break and then come back and figure out how we will use justify content properties to style that header cell. So let's take a quick break and then figure that out.